Sure. Hopefully you'll do that in an hour. So other than, I didn't get your name, and I'm sorry.
My name is Joey.
Hi, Joey. How are you? My name is Barry Kleiman. I'm, first of all, honored truly to have this opportunity. I have a very strong passion in my life for teaching, coaching, sharing, particularly with young people younger than myself. I'm a high school basketball coach. I really enjoy the energy of people kind of stepping up. I do a lot of executive coaching with people older than yourself, more advanced in their careers. And it's great and it's fun, but I wouldn't want them to hear that what I just said is that I'd really rather work with younger people just because minds are fresher, easier to change, and so forth and so on. I'll do my best to just come on in and it's fine. So I am honored. I think, a quick how I got here essentially was I was working with a woman named Sarah Shen, who's an alumni of this program, and I met her through my executive recruiting practice, and we just hit it off. And Sarah, I think, said some nice things to me about Jay about me, I should say, and that's how all this came about. And so how long did we talk, Jay, about coming down here, putting all this together? I guess this is a fairly new series for you folks, this Entrepreneurial Speaker Series. So it's been great, and it truly is an honor, really to come down and do this. I drove down yesterday. I had a lot of thoughts about how to take whatever we have, 60 or 75 minutes, and get out some message that might be tangible for you folks. So I guess I told Judson a little while ago that I thought I would title this short segment, because I've done these things for 4 and 5 hours, but I thought I would just title this segment, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So did that title attract anybody to come here today? I'm just curious. Okay, great. I just, just purely marketing, guys. And what attracted you about it? Okay, all right. So, I thought about it because a lot of, what I teach and share has to do with career direction and focus. And, I teach a bigger course called How the Truth Will Set You and Your Career Free. I'm a very huge proponent in truth and finding your own. I put some quotes up on the blackboard here, behind me that deal with truths and things like that in different ways from people far more noteworthy than myself, just to stress a point about that and following your heart. So you might kind of find them and read them, along the way as we go. Somebody once said, if you can't be bright, then quote bright people. So I'll take the second tact and quote some bright people. I think that the main thing that I would hope to get across tonight, my son is here, is also a UCLA grad, and I was just joking with him and Jay before. I thought a lot about how to get this all started and how I'd want to do, and I still had no idea. So I'm going to be very much a stream of consciousness, and as I said to Jay a minute ago, I really am here, folks, as your servant. I would appreciate as much as possible, as much question and interaction as possible. Again, I've done these for 5 hours. I really don't have any interest in just standing here and talking. I'll do it. I'll share as much as I can, but as many questions as you all would have, or interaction, or I already told Jay I was going to call on them. So if there's an opportunity and you want to ask a question or share or disagree or anything at all, that's fine, because a lot of times people have a question in their mind, but they're embarrassed to ask it, and so, but somebody else asked it and see, well, that's what I was going to say, and so forth. So please feel free to jump in, raise your hand, interject, and so forth and so on. So does anybody, so just for clarity's sake, I'm not a millionaire. And I feel very accomplished in a lot of things in my life, but I'm not a millionaire. But I was on January 1st of this year, I sat down and not so much made resolutions, but thought about what I wanted to try to accomplish here at this point in my own life. And I thought that I would try to take some of my passion and expertise and experience and see if I could, take it to a different level. So if that winds up monetizing in something more, beyond what it already has, that's great, but it's still not necessarily a goal for me. But I think that everybody has a fundamental responsibility to continue to learn and grow in their lives, and particularly about yourselves. And that to me is the most important message. So one of the things that I would always challenge people to do is, and again, I say this so often, I feel like a broken record to myself, but I don't have answers, folks, but I do have lots of questions. I'm very Socratic in the way I go about things. And so when I said who wants to be a millionaire, it really is a question, right? Who wants to be a millionaire? And so when you said, just since you rose your hand, so I'll use you as a foil for a while. Tell me your name again, I'm really sorry. Gabriel. So $1 million sounds cool? Yeah, no, I mean, it does sound cool. And that's kind of a key point. So, one of the things is that money is certainly a measure of success. But I think that if you think about it, and some of the people who have really attained tremendous success in life, in business, and in the world, I think you'll find it, it goes far beyond just monetary measurements. Is there somebody, Jay, who would you deem successful? Just a name from anywhere. Bill Gates, successful. Is he successful just because he's wealthy? Right, okay. And again, just kind of why would you say Bill Gates is successful beyond his wealth?
I'd say because the product that he introduced was pretty groundbreaking at the time. Maybe because it's got a lasting impact. Maybe it's because something that he was interested in because he kind of monetized off of it.
Okay. So if he never monetized off it, but the product still did what it did, what percentage of the world uses Microsoft Office? What percentage of the world uses, his tools? I mean, obviously there's a monetization that occurs from all that, but he's also really, in a way, kind of changed the world, right? Bill Gates was on Charlie Rose one night with his dad, and he dropped out of Harvard not once but twice. Did anybody know that about him? And it really pissed his father off. It really pissed his father off. But he had a vision beyond. He had a vision beyond Harvard, and so he took that vision and he made it work for him, and it turned into Microsoft. And I always like to think that if he never dropped out of Harvard, there may not be Microsoft, right? There may not be the products that we have today. Who knew? Is it a slam dunk to think that somebody else would have done what he did? Is that an absolute that somebody else would have done what he did? It's not, right? So the point is, kind of following your heart along the way. There's a quote over here on the my right. Has anybody read any Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? So have you read it? You know what? That's a great book. I would actually recommend that more because it's the same concepts, just a little not as intense, but the message is, did you like it? Did you take anything from it? I've learned a lot from Stephen Covey, and so again, I try to quote smart people, but what he says over there is, we all have this responsibility to exercise our embryonic freedoms, and so there are a lot of people in your lives who love and care about you, who have scripts written for you, but they don't have to live your lives. So again, everything that I want to teach and share, and hopefully I get across here in the time that we have, is, the point of understanding, knowing, following, your heart, what you do, what you're about, and try to keep at it and keep very current with yourself. I was just talking to Jay about career fairs. And so, Jay, how do they decide who comes into a career fair here? Do you folks invite people, or, how does it? Yes. Okay, and what is that based on?
Well, usually each career fair has like a theme.
Okay.
So if it's like a consulting career fair, and obviously your shop is going to be consulting for a career fair.
Okay.
Kind of that thing.
Okay. Does anybody? I know Jay has a path that he's chosen, at least short term. Does anybody else in here have a path that they've kind of chosen, or something that they think they're going to do, or maybe even have a job offer, or going to go? Jay's going to move up to San Francisco. We've talked about that a little bit. Is anybody else at that point in their careers? Okay. And what are you going to be doing for them?
Market passengers.
Okay. Okay. And so why did you pick that? Just curious.
Because initially, my grandfather said that I would call and for that, and I have to get a job on my own.
Sure. So, so no, that's fair enough, and that's fair enough. So when will you start?
I started on June 26th.
My birthday. And so basically, that path for starters has a little bit to do with some outside influence of someone in your family and so forth. This is very much a norm and obviously fine. The thing I would encourage all of you to do is try to stay, very, very current with yourself, with what really interests you, what really drives you, because as you see from another quote on the board from Steve Jobs, and some people that I think have been incredibly accomplished in their life, and of course who've made a lot of money as well, is about passion and following heart, because it's probably the most important thing you can do, because it's still you, it's still what drives you, you still have this heart about yourselves, and so, or something that speaks to you, even if you don't operate on it, it's there. Does anybody have something that they've wanted to do that haven't done? That they think that they really have wanted to try but haven't done for some reason or another? Anything at all? Played an instrument, tried out for football, or anything at all? You've all accomplished every single goal you've set out to take?
I want to model.
Liars. You want to model? Okay.
I want to travel.
You want to travel? And is what has stopped you? School, money?
School,
Okay. So have you sat down and tried to figure out a plan to execute your travel plans? And do you work on it on a constant and consistent basis? And
well, I mean, I've definitely done things like traveling.
so, I mean, and that's great, obviously. Have you set out a blueprint for it? I mean, figured out where the steps are and how that might occur? Sort of. Okay. And I'll get. Thanks for sharing. First of all, that's brave. Have you set out a plan to do modeling?
No, I call one agency.
Okay. All right. Anybody else that you've all accomplished everything you've kind of set out to do? Awesome. Should probably come up and teach and share. I think, for me, I think that I find that, I'm actually going to have to go out on a limb and say I'm probably not everybody's being 100% forthright, it is a guess. And whether it's fitness or, whatever it is, writing or reading or whatever, I'm gonna go out on a limb. Jay, how about you? Is there anything else that you'd like to be doing that you haven't operated on at this point? And so, where do you want to travel? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to, and what's stopping you from doing it? Time. You have a set date to start up in San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
And so, will that intersect with school? I mean, will you go right from there, from school to your travel?
Yeah. School would work pretty much.
Okay. So, could you have made time to start your job and travel? Yeah, I'm just curious. Probably not. Okay, so it'd be harder to do. So I'll start with you then because you were kind enough. So do you really, really want to travel?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you think it's going to happen?
Well, I think my first step is staying abroad, and then, this summer I'm looking for a teaching abroad, and then hopefully I might follow the steps of my brother. He got a job after college, but he had about a 3 or 4 month period in between when he graduated and then he started his work, so we want to travel
Okay.
to South America.
So with respect to what you want to do, I'll try to help you here beyond everyone else. So is there what would be the next step in you implementing your plan to move forward? Do you have a concrete plan, or do you think would you want to sit down and kind of figure out what that might look like and then start to take some steps toward it?
I don't have a concrete plan. It's definitely just whatever works out.
Okay.
And try and find
How do you do that? How do you find the opportunities? I'm actually trying to help you. Please don't take this the wrong way.
well, for instance, I'd love to work in with those kind of growth.
Mm-hmm. good for you.
And then, I mean, I'm set that they're in this undergrad program, probably in the next week. That's all I can say.
That's great, actually, as a matter of fact. So what happens? I mean, do you follow up on your interviews up at Whistler, or what's your kind of next step for some of these things?
Well, I already have some resumes in, so I just need to wait to hear back from places. But I mean, I also have limitations as far as getting my schoolwork done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to take some school year.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So, one of the things I obviously I'm trying to get at is, there's, how far are we from the Wooden Center? A couple hundred yards?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew it was near here somewhere, but I didn't know exactly where it was. So, there's one of Coach Wooden's many quotes is, those who fail to prepare are prepared to fail. So, to the best of your ability, when you set out on this thing, if you could kind of nail down your plans as much as you can, right, and make follow-up calls to Whistler every 6 weeks, make, whatever it is, and I don't know the exact track you're going on, so I don't have specifics to do, but you'll find that, everybody, that there are a lot of people in a lot of universities and a lot of places all across the country who are in similar, boats to you. Jay, how many people do you think apply for the job that you got up in San Francisco? 200? 200 from UCLA? And how many do they hire? Okay. All right. So 1 or 2 out of 200. Do you know how many people applied for the job that you got, or? Oh, wow. Well, good for you. Well, good for you. So beyond, I'm just curious, beyond the family influence of you taking that role, is there anything else about it that, really intrigued you? Is it
I worked there this summer.
okay.
And I enjoyed it and I know I want to be for 2 years, which is the program.
Okay.
Try after that, go to that aspect.
Okay. And what about yourself? What are you studying? Okay. And what are you looking to do with it? Just curious. Into, like, Accenture or?
I mean, not necessarily something more strategy, something more.
And so, where do you see your niche? When you go to consult, when you go and interview with these folks, how would you propose to them what your unique selling proposition is? Because obviously it's highly competitive, right? So, have you sat down and really thought through how you would explain your niche and what you want to do and why you versus some of the other? I'm just, again, curious.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to do that when I've gone into interviews. I don't know how well it works, but, I definitely just sit down and think about that. And I talk about, my past experiences and how they've influenced me, and how I feel like I can do
How many have you interviewed with? I'm just curious. I don't know the job market and what you're doing.
So I'm going through internship recruiting, not full time. So I, probably I don't know, 6 or 7 years so far.
Okay. Do you find the question lines similar or dissimilar, or when they come to you and say, "Tell us about this," or "Why did you do that," or are they?
A lot of the consulting interviews are getting prototype interviews and they're not necessarily real. A lot of them are just case studies. So there's a lot of things that happens usually. Let's just have a good case. So we can take this problem and then solve this problem.
Okay.
And then they might ask you, like most interviews I've had, they ask you like 2 questions like, why consulting and why us?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That sounds pretty standard. Have you ever, when you got asked that the first time, did you ever sit down then the second time and say, "I better have a really kind of good answer"?
I actually had a plan to answer going in all my interviews because I had practiced.
Good for you.
So I had a plan to answer for those 2 questions for everything.
Did that make it a little more comfortable once you had that plan in place?
Oh, yeah, definitely more comfortable because I was ready to answer the question. It wasn't like a surprise.
Sure. Sure. Are you happy with your answer? Do you keep tweaking it or working on it?
I tweak on it because every time I'm just tweaking it, it's good.
Sure.
Sometimes you come out and like, wow,
It happens. It's really it's a very, I mean, it's almost, atmospheric sometimes. It's like, you're not going to be on all the time, and the person you're talking to or whatever. So it is, back to the scheme of preparation. It is a good idea to try the best that you can, to prepare, because you're still going to hiccup sometimes. And, it sounds like you've done a great job of at least preparing the areas that you could. But then there's all the case studies, and you have no idea, of course, what they throw at you, right? And that just becomes like an intellectual contest in a way. You're kind of playing beat the clock or some.
Prepare for those, like there's a bunch of books out there, and you can have like frameworks set up. But from what I realized, I haven't used one framework.
Right, I would bet that's true.
Like they're all the cases that you don't. I've had an opportunity.
I mean, there's got to be a zillion cases, right? So how are you supposed to pick, which ones or whatever? So I think it's important, and everybody, it does turn into some point to an intellectual contest, some of these things. I mean, if you don't get it right. But I would share with you that I've been through the upshot of, I don't know how many thousands of interviews in my life. 38 years worth of watching people through interview cycles. And so no two are almost ever the same. And many times at the end of the day, the people who get jobs may not have done the best work on the case study, but they are also prepared otherwise and have a certain, charisma and feel and sincerity and warmth. Some they won't. They just want, for lack of a better term, an egghead, somebody who can just muddle through the problems. But particularly in consulting, ultimately you're out selling the firm, right, with personality. You're not going to go represent somebody's people, Bain or whomever, if your interpersonal skills suck, right, if you don't know how to dress or respond with people in your trade as well, correct? I mean, you can't just be a robot, and so I laud you actually, and would encourage all of you to take some lessons from that, as far as trying your best to prepare and then make it sound credible and honest and fluid and believable. And again, it goes back to what I teach and believe in shares. Truth will set you free. And so I think it's always okay to tell somebody you don't know something in an interview, or I've never come across that, but I've done this, and because ultimately you get hired, whether you all believe it or not. Not all the time. There's nothing that happens all the time. But many times you're going to get hired because of some of the intangibles that you bring to an interview. You absolutely will get hired for some of the intangibles that you bring. So make sure you brush up on you. If you can't represent yourself well, it's going to be hard, to get hired. Some people are shyer. You seem like you have a pretty outgoing personality and so forth. Some people are more shy, and that's fine. But you still need to be versed in yourself. Does everybody understand that? I mean, you should at least be able to speak to yourself. I had lunch today with a gentleman who's been in the film industry for many, many years. And he was actually, I brought him together with my son, who's a comedy writer, and his writing partner. And the gentleman said, "What do you guys do?" And they're actually very accomplished. I won't embarrass them at all, but they've actually had comedy variety show on UCLA television and so forth. But I told them I gave them about a B+ for their answer, and if it was the same answer next week, I'd give them a B-, because they weren't quite as prepared as they might have been to speak about themselves. And at least about yourself, you should be fluid, right, and be able to get your message across. Am I making sense, everybody? Does that resonate with everybody? I mean, if you can't speak about yourself in some tangible and fluid and energetic and compelling terms, you're not really setting yourself apart in any way for somebody to want to hire you, right? Because, I mean, again, if you can't speak about you, who knows, pardon me, who knows better about you than anybody else? What you learn here in the classroom at UCLA, you can sit anywhere, it's fine. What you learn here in the classroom at UCLA is, of course, invaluable, but there are, I live up in Berkeley. I mean, there's Berkeley's, there's Stanford's, there's UCLA. There's a lot of competition. Jay just said there's probably 200 that apply and 2 that get hired. It's not exactly great odds, right? But if you're versed in you and you're very, very clear about how you want to represent yourself in as as tangible and efficient terms as possible. You should really take the time to do that. You might walk into another one the next time and they say, you know, we really liked your answers. Tell me your name again, I'm sorry. Kyle, sorry, Kyle. Kyle, we really liked your answers the first time. Tell us where you want to be in 5 years. You know, and tell us why you want to be there. And, you know, all of a sudden, had you thought that through? Had you really been able to explain that in some very tangible terms? So don't ever think that you're just sitting there and going to, just because you get a case study right there, could be 5 guys that got the case study, you know, a good answer, right? So then there's all these intangibles. So all of you, you know, I really didn't know where my conversation was going to go here tonight, but since we got into this thread of the next steps for some of you, preparation is a huge key to your success moving forward, and certainly preparation about yourself first. Does that make sense, everybody? I mean, if you want to, anybody, how'd you break your foot or whatever? Okay, are you a competitive soccer player on a high-level team? Okay, all right. Did you play in high school? Okay, so did your teams kind of really work hard and prepare and practice and get fit and all those things? Were your teams any good? So, I mean, that's a great accomplishment, right? You know, so a lot of it starts in the practice of it. And so this is practice, too, as you go about this. The classroom is one place. And, of course, it's important. But please, you know, all across the country, there are hundreds of people like yourselves vying for the same group of jobs. So if I could get any one message across here this evening in the time that we have, it would speak to that. Has anyone ever sat down and really, you know, written, you know, like what I would call a USP, unique selling proposition, why you? Like they ask you, you know, why you? What is it about you, Kyle, that we would want to hire? You know, has anybody ever did you ever sit and do that and think it through? It's probably a valuable exercise, everybody, to think about doing. It's probably a really valuable exercise. And again, speak from your heart. There's no problem in making stuff up. You can say, look, I could go one of 3 directions. That, you know, that's fine. I haven't decided between these 2 or 3 things. I see myself going here for these reasons, here for these reasons, and here for these reasons. But today, as I know myself, you know, those are the areas that I would, you know, pursue. What was your interviewing process like, Jay, for investment bank? I'm just curious. How much of it was soft skills? Is probably the question I really would rather ask. Okay. And like what types of things?
Just questions that provide insights, like your attitude, your work ethic, your working teams.
So you obviously did a great job because you got hired. So how did you handle some of those things? How did you describe your work ethic?
I drew a lot on sort of past examples and kind of what I learned from that, and I sort of tied that into why that would make me a qualified candidate.
So examples of projects that you had to undertake, and you gave them specific examples or stories or something. That's absolutely brilliant, and that's absolutely the best way. What about like team player stuff? Same thing? Past examples? Okay. So these types of intangibles, in some way, shape, or form, you're all going to run into in interviews. Unless you apply for a job as a rocket scientist and you have a skill that nobody else has, you think about half, Jay, with soft skills. And so, prominent investment banking firm. My guess is the Bains of the world, or, you know, even though they give you those case studies, my guess is it's still about half of, you know.
I'd say probably like actually 90%.
Exactly.
90%.
Well, I don't want to say that, but.
No, it's like 10% soft.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's very minimal. Whatever it is. They judge your fit based on like cases that you do kind of like talk through, but there's not really a whole heck of a lot of soft skills. Like the interview process for this second round was 6 cases.
Okay.
Very minimal.
Do you know people who've gotten hired in these places?
Yeah.
Have you talked to them about the rest of the process?
Yeah, I actually have a friend that works there, so I talked to him about the process and how it goes through and how they select people. And it's basically, a lot of people know people going in there, so
Sure.
you get people vying for fit-wise, but it's also, how you carry yourself in the interview and how you work through the cases.
So carry yourself in an interview means what?
Obviously, there's the interview might try to throw you off on certain things during the case. Like, if you're working
So has anybody else been on interviews for jobs at any point in time and kind of tripped or stumbled, or what percentage of you folks are third or fourth year? What are you looking to study? What are you looking to do next?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
I was actually interested in hearing about entrepreneurship.
Okay. And to what end?
Just starting your own company.
Sure.
That with your experience with that.
Sure.
And what we would recommend for someone who wants to go that route.
Okay. So I'll speak to that actually, because for me it all kind of comes back to the same thing, which is kind of your passion and your heart. So what I would say is, I would ask you the question of what really drives you? Want to answer me?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a communications major, and I'm looking into production and multimedia media at university, public media.
Do you want to start your own company coming right out of school?
Yeah. I think that would definitely have to get through
Okay.
I do that.
And so it drives you just, you're interested in it. It's something that you feel in your heart. I mean, it's something you have, you look at it and say, God, I could do a lot more with this and so forth. Okay. So, I mean, the first thing I would tell you to do, of course, is to find, a company that does some of the things that you like to do and find a mentor. Find somebody in a company, in an organization that, can teach you, not just the technical skills, but maybe, was an entrepreneur, or, you might want to, if you're going to start start a company on your own at some point, it's a good idea to go out and get some large company experience and see the way larger companies do things in that field, and then maybe morph it down to smaller companies and get into some entrepreneurial environments. Some are more or less successful than others. And again, I would set out a plan to say, well, by a certain amount of time, I want to be in a certain place. And in order to do that, I need to get these experiences, and whatever, they are. And so you could say by the time I'm 30, I would like to have this type of firm doing these types of things, right? Kind of Stephen Covey in the little kid's book, Begin with the End in Mind, right? Stephen Covey in the book, Begin with the End in Mind. So if it's a very powerful thing. So if you want to do that, and I would put some time parameters on it. And say by the time I'm 30, and then kind of work backwards, and again have a very incremental plan, not dissimilar to your travel plans or whatever it was, and then work backwards and set out a timetable for yourself, right? To do that, and then try to ask a lot of questions, like Kyle did. He asked his friend questions about what's it going to take to get a job in this firm, and he tried to educate himself, which is very smart. So ask him, well, what would it be like? What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the boulders? What are some of the rocks, that I have to, get out of the way or dig through or fight over, to get to where I want to get to? And if it's not time bound, you're probably going to stretch it out more and more. It probably won't happen. Is there any goal planning that's done in any of the classes that you folks have here? That's not taught in school. Does anybody hear of the SMART acronym for goals? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. You know that, really? Okay. So I mean, it's an interesting thing, but it speaks to what we talk about. And as I was telling this young lady whose name I've forgotten, I'm sorry. I mean, it's if you want to do something, then you want to set out a plan to do it, right? You say, I'm going to do this. Has anybody ever heard of the book? I'm tossing out a couple books that I would suggest some people read if you're at all unclear about what you might want to do moving forward. There's a wonderful old book called Think and Grow Rich. Has anybody ever heard of it? It's amazing to me that no one's ever heard in a great school like this. I'll write my email address up on the board. I can actually send you a free copy that is free on the web. I found somewhere, and I'm happy to send it to you. It's a book that was written in the 30s by a gentleman named Napoleon Hill. And the quick story about it is Napoleon Hill went to Andrew Carnegie, who was a very successful industrialist back in that time, and asked him for a job. And Carnegie said, "I'm not going to give you a job, but what I will do is give you an opportunity to make you rich beyond your wildest dreams." He said, "I'm going to give you my Rolodex." I doubt if he called it a Rolodex, but a list of all of my friends who were some of the most successful business people in that era, the Schwabs and the Mellons and the Jennings Bryants and the Eastmans and so forth. He said there's got to be a common thread to their success, and if you could figure out what that is, you write a book about it, and this book will make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. And the book is Think and Grow Rich, and it's an incredibly wonderful thing to read, everybody. I couldn't stress it enough. I didn't write it. I said no royalties. I don't sell anything at all. But it's a great volume. But he talks about a lot of things like having goals and time-bound goals and writing things down and having some very specific things. So I would share with you in a quick Cliff Notes version of that to get stuff written down and to have dates attached to it are really important things. Goals are really powerful things, and not having them are, you wind up lacking, power. They just become free form, and time passes, and you're not kind of getting anywhere, and you wonder why. It's because you haven't been goal driven. When you guys had your soccer program, I imagine there were fitness goals and certain goals that you set for yourselves. I don't know soccer at all, to be honest, so I don't want to pretend I do. But I would imagine just from I do coach, from a perspective, your coach set out a plan for your fitness and when your offense got set in and when your defense got set in, and you had, you want to be playing your best at the end of the season. Is that? So you obviously did something right, because you won a championship or something like that. And so in sports season, goals are very time bound, right? It's a finite amount of games, and you want to try to get things planned at certain point in games. And of course, within a game, there's goals within a game, right? There's a clock ticking, and you have to accomplish certain things by a certain period of time. So if you sit down and think about goals in this SMART acronym of specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, SMART. But I'll make it even easier for you. If it's just specific, measurable, and time-bound, that's a great way to start your entrepreneurship. Okay? It really is a great way to start. It won't just happen because you want it to happen. It'll happen because you kind of will it to happen. And you start to realize some of the blocks that you need to fill in, some of the boulders you need to move, some of the holes that you need to dig, and some of it, of course, is hard work. But if you have a goal in mind, and you have a goal in mind for your team, it's a pain in the ass to run all those laps or whatever some of the training is, but you have a greater good in mind, right? And you operate around that for that purpose. Well, it's the same thing. It's not easy. There won't be a straight line. But if you have this goal and you set out and you wrote it down and this is something you wanted to act on and you gave yourself time parameters to do it, you'll find you'll achieve stuff a lot more than just kind of free-floating it around. I didn't make this up, but I can share with you it's one of the most powerful things you can do. And if you don't do it, you won't do it. I don't know when would you start? If you had a goal to do whatever. Would you start tomorrow? Would you start next week? Would you start next month? At one point. So that's one of the best things I can tell you is to set out a really specific plan. I want to have this type of company. And what I would tell you after when you say I want to have this kind of company, I would write down why. Why do you want to do what you say you want to do? I'm just curious. As you know yourself today.
Because I'm passionate about promoting media literacy to children, to educate them about the effects of media effects, and various things that connect with race, gender, and class. And I feel that media is a powerful tool to that influences young males and females, and I feel that with curriculum media literacy, I feel like that should be implemented in these classrooms. And I haven't figured out how to start my own company yet.
Oh, that's fair.
Something related to the language of that, and also I'm really interested in social philanthropy. Social entrepreneurship. So really, it's not about it's also social welfare.
Okay. Sounds like Sarah did. Sarah J. is very interested in social entrepreneurship and so forth. So one of the things you could do is go speak to some nonprofit leaders, or go around to some nonprofits that maybe are in this area, and find out if you might be able to help institute a social media program for for a school that they may be involved with, or a program, or if they have a program in the school that you might teach a course in it to these people, and just integrate yourself and put yourself out there, kind of for free, as it were, but just start to see if you can, how powerful you feel like you get your message across, and so forth. You have to kind of just take steps, and some of the steps won't be right, but they'll be better than taking no steps at all, right? And so I would just, again, sit down and design a plan that, as you know yourself today, gets you moving forward one step at a time. It won't happen kind of just by magic. Do you know what I mean? And so, set out very specific and measurable goals that you can, act on a daily, weekly, monthly, or annual basis to kind of push you along. Because, everybody, maybe the most important thing I could share with you is I'm 60 years old, and I knew it when I was 18 that what I wanted to do with my life, and I didn't do it until I was 45, because I didn't have somebody up in front of a class like this kind of pushing me and explaining to me and making me understand the value of time and priorities and passion and so forth. And so, I have a close friend who's a very successful acting coach. And when he says when he walks into a class, he's very, very accomplished and has some big name stars that are, come to his class. But he says that, I know I'm going to sit and talk to most of you, and maybe only one person will take action on what I'm sharing with you, and yet some of his students are some of the most successful people, in their trade. And so, what I would share with all of you, or maybe in a way challenge all of you to do, is to think about, if you haven't sat down and set some goals for yourself, whether it's just how to get past your next course, right, or how to get out of a course that you really don't like and you just got to get through it because there's a greater good. This is a really important thing, to set goals and kind of get through stuff, because, ladies and gentlemen, the pages of the calendar are turning, and I know it's not as obvious to you at your age, but it becomes more obvious as you get older. And so time, just is very fluid. It kind of keeps going. So to stay current with yourself and what you want to do and set some time-bound goals will really help you. There's a thing people say, well, I don't manage my time that well. You may have ever heard people say that. And so what I've learned is you can't really manage time. You can't. Time is going to do what it's going to do. Right? That second hand is, I'm showing my age, the digital clock. It's moving. You can manage your priorities. Okay, so it's really, really important to understand what you're about. And you can change your mind at any given time, but when you know what matters to you, I would, again, to your point, since you've been so gracious in interacting here, I would tell you to then operate around your priorities and put time on your side by putting, what matters most to you as a part of your daily or weekly or monthly calendar, to move it forward. Does that make sense? In other words, keep going toward what you think you want to do, because, the calendar doesn't care, but, you can manage your own time and your own priorities by putting things ahead of other things. Does that make sense?
So whatever is more important, just put it ahead.
Sure.
That's not that important, just drop it.
Sure. Stephen Covey again says the chief cause of failure and unhappiness is trading what you want now for what you want most. And so, yes, figure out what matters most to you and do those things. It doesn't mean you can't make time for fun and recreation or all those things, but if you know this is something you want to do and you set a goal for yourself, you'll get there because your goals have driven you. And if you don't, the time will keep passing. Mañana, the next day, and then all of a sudden it's, a week, a month, a year, 10 years, 20-some years later. And that happens too. And again, I'm living testament to it. It is what it is. And so I think it's probably one of the most powerful messages that I could give to people, is to continue to stay current. You may go into Bain, and I hope you get hired by Bain, and it goes great. You may find in 5 years this was great, but now I want to kind of go and do something else. But a lot of your friends are going to be maybe driving fancy cars or living in big houses or, whatever it is, and that's great too. But make sure you, do your very best to operate on what matters most to you, because again, the ultimate capital is time. And so if you can really stay in touch with what I call your what's and your whys, I think you'll be you'll serve yourself very well, and you also serve your shareholders very well, your parents, your friends, your business constituents, and so forth, your spouses, if it turns to that. Because if you're happy, then people around you will be happy. And so just, again, as you know yourself today, I would keep operating around that, okay, and keep taking action toward that, and set out a plan every day, and you'll feel very good to make a checkbox on the piece of paper and say, well, I got this done, and now what's next? And now what's next? And the next may not be the best next, but, some action is better than no action, right? Because, if you take an action that was the wrong thing, you did learn, right, that probably wasn't the right thing to do, so you can move it away anyway. Does that make sense to everybody? In other words, that was wrong, but at least it's out of my consciousness. Okay? At least it's out of my consciousness. Is there any particular reason that, beyond, anything else that anybody, came tonight? Or, is there, again, I'm really here as a servant to all of you and trying to share some of what I've learned in my life. I am a serial entrepreneur. I've been involved in the careers of literally tens of thousands of people, some at a very, very high level, some who have fancy educations and have failed, in their lives. I've been blessed to meet and be, have recommendations from some, very, very prominent people, and that's flattering. But I've seen a lot of lives and careers kind of go in different directions, and so when I agreed, when I asked Jay before I said to come down, I said, is my stuff appropriate for this series? And we talked about it a couple times, did we not, Jay? And so, he thought it was, and so the reason I think I can help is kind of direction and maybe process of direction. I'm never here to tell anybody what to do. I don't have any agenda for your life or tell you what you want to be when you grow up. It's none of my business, and I fully get that. But I do have experience to tell you how other people have gotten to places where they've wanted to get to and they genuinely wanted to get to from their heart. So, if there's any way that, some of those experiences and stories and case studies can help anybody, again, I'm really here to try to help at all.
I'm curious about your past. You said you were 18, 21, and then you started in 45. What's your between what made you change paths?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking. So when I was 18, I knew from the bottom of my heart that I had a strong passion to coach basketball. I knew it when I was, 18 years old, and I would say that fear kept me from operating on my passion. Fear of some of what you read over there, parents, associates, society, whatever. It wasn't, at the time, Ben Howland wasn't making $1 million a year. Basketball coaches were making probably $35,000, $40,000 a year, and you should have been a doctor or a lawyer or an Indian chief or something like that. And frankly, I just bought into the dogma. I kind of lived other people's lives for them and never really kind of followed my heart. And then one day I woke up and I read a book actually, and I said, well, I'll tell you what I said to myself. You're a dumbass, to myself. You didn't really follow your heart. You knew it was there all along, and it just kind of changed my life on a dime, frankly. I made a 180-degree turn as far as where to spend my time, and I took some of my earning opportunity in my field of endeavor, and I put it aside because I had this part of my heart that needed to be used. And so, but in between, I had an executive search business that I've been in it since I was 22 years old. And as I said, you do the math. Along the way, I did, once I started to coach basketball, I started to do some executive coaching because I really realized that one of my strengths is teaching and sharing. And Socratically, by the way, I do a lot of questioning. Again, I'm not here preaching to anybody. And so, but I started to do a lot of executive coaching for people that, I'll quote Stephen Covey one more time, most people spend their whole life trying to climb the ladder of success just to find it's up against the wrong wall. Anybody ever hear that quote? You did? So, and again, take it from me, who's been involved in the lives of many, 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 many people. I have an 8,000, 8,500 person database And who knows, some of them are probably no longer with us, and there's a lot of connectivity there. So there have been a lot of people whose lives I've been involved with, but a lot of them are not particularly thrilled with their career. They feel stuck, they feel frustrated, and so I was that same person, and I just decided to change it. And then when I did, I was able to help some other people kind of dig a little deeper into what mattered and find other ways to explore their passion. And so then along the way, I've been blessed. I've wound up being recommended, mentored, or whatever by some people very prominent in that field. They've introduced me to a lot of other people, and I wound up kind of making my name a little ass backwards, if you want to know the truth. But at 45, I woke up and said, that's still my heart, and I still have to follow it. And so, but honestly, I would say fear, if you must know the truth. And so, I was glad that at 45 I got unscared a little bit, because I've made some wonderful friends and really, have a whole different vision of what my unique contribution could be to the world, and so forth. So does that help? Okay. Is anybody else? Is there anything else I could share, or any questions at all? What kind of field are you looking to get involved with? What? Okay. How about you? Bunch of sissies. Okay. In consulting too. So, is anybody interested in industry? Corporate life beyond consulting or investment banking? I noticed when I was on LinkedIn, I think I was telling Jay that most of the people out of UBS are in consulting or investment banking. I guess that's just the trend for right now. And again, that's fine. I was kind of curious to see it. In fact, I would say it feels like it was. I didn't do a strong study, Jay, but I feel like it was about 90% of people in that world. Is there any part of this? I actually feel a bit like a failure, because I feel like I'm not serving you for the purpose of what you came in here to learn or whatever. And so, is there anybody that's any questions at all relating to career or how to negotiate a part of their career, or any part of that? The goal planning process, the success process. Again, I've had an opportunity to deal with a lot of people who I've learned quite a bit from, and I'm more than glad to share. Like I said, I had an executive search business, and I was involved in helping people find jobs. I started in New York City when I was 22 years old. I was a PE major at Penn State, and I'll date myself, but I already did that. When I got out of college, you could get a draft deferment from the Vietnam War if you went into teaching. So the whole world went into teaching. And I genuinely wanted to teach, but this is hard for a lot of people to believe now, but when I graduated Penn State, there were no teaching jobs. They pushed me off into something called physical therapy, which at the time was a totally unheard of thing. And again, I know I'm dating myself, but that's the truth. There was one university, Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, that taught that. And so I didn't want to be a physical therapist. I wanted to teach. And so I just kind of migrated around, and I fell across a job in New York City, and it happened to be in recruiting, and just kind of kept going to the point I'm trying to make to you, and the clock kept turning. And I kind of didn't have my goals prioritized, and I just let the pages of the calendar keep turning and turning and turning, and then all of a sudden, I was 45. And then I cursed myself out a little bit after this book that I read, and I've met a lot of wonderful people along the way, don't get me wrong. I have some great friends from the business that I'm in, and continue to be friends, but it still wasn't all me. And so I had actually a very successful business, but it wasn't successful, 100% of my heart. I made money. I did fine. I helped my 2 kids get through college, and bought a house, and I've been married for 30 some odd years, and so that part of my life is great. But there was still this other kind of heartbeat that was in there. So I had a business, and then again one day I woke up and said, I'm a dumbass, and decided to to follow that. And so again, there's a lot of lessons in there. If nothing else, if you're too shy or don't really have any questions, I'll get to that here in a second. That's fine, but at least take that to set some goals for yourself. Make them smart, measurable and time bound, and operate around them. Adam, you had a question, then I'm going to give a quick goal setting analogy, and then if we're done, we're done. Adam.
No, I mean, I don't know if any of you guys are, I was doing the industry since I'm in the environment. And today's industry is kind of upside down the economy, starts out of the state that it's out of the world. I know what my heart wants to be doing in the environment. Already when you're talking about communications now, papers and setting goals, I've been doing that now for a month and a half, and I've already seen tremendous results. I would love for you to maybe go out to some of these guys, some other resources, other than the Golden Go, which I'm going to echo, check them out. Very phenomenal, like, it's changed my life for accuracy is. But for Sean and everything to check out, but like for a guy like me, and I don't know if any of you guys are like this, but there isn't necessarily like a job where you show up and you interview. You kind of have to make your path in today's world. And also in my industry, there's a million different paths to kind of the mountaintop and how to kind of sit through when you have to sort of create your opportunity versus show up at somebody's doorstep and be like, yo, give me that job. It's a little bit more open-ended.
I think that's true. I mean, again, I would say that considering that all of you have been able to get into this school, which is a fine school, and you've gotten as far as you have, my guess is that intellectually, you're all capable of doing anything you want to do. That's my guess. I mean, if you don't get hired by Bain, I'm sure you'll get a job at one of the places that you want to. I'm sure of it. I mean, you have a lot of presence and so forth. I think intellectually, that's not the issue. I think is maybe to your point, and but the issue is making sure it is doing what you really, really want to do moving forward. I mean, this quote from Steve Jobs to me just resonated so well, and ironically, he wrote that before he got sick, and so forth. And now he's kind of struggling from a health perspective. But a guy like Steve Jobs changed the world by following his heart. I mean, Jay and I were just joking about iPhones and stuff like that. I mean, how old's the iPhone? 2007. So I mean, in 2005, not that long ago, you would have talked about this thing, and it's like, shut up. Not possible. And then, there's iPhones and iPads, and it's just going to keep going. It's just somebody who has a vision and trust in their vision and has the passion to drive ahead and essentially, change the world. The guys who founded Google, the same and so forth. So, there's a lot there, but it does start. I'm sure there are stories, but there are very few stories that don't start with something that's very heartfelt. That drives you, beyond what drives other people. And so again, it's attention to Gandhi. I mean, Van Gogh. Read all these people. They very much talk about your heart and following it and listening to it. It's an important thing. The reason I came down here, and I drove, down here to do this was to try to get that message across. Again, honestly, part of me feels like I'm failing here, but maybe in 2 years, y'all get it. But that's okay. Honestly, that's okay. It's still going to exist, and someday you're going to feel this ping here, and you're going to say, "That's what that old guy was talking about." That's what he was, sir. Sure. That's a great question, and you know what? I'm going to tell you that I'm not here to tell you what to do, other than listen to yourself. It's a great question. Don't wait till you're 45. It's a great question, and I think only you can really answer that. But again, if you set out goals for yourself, it really does start with that. I mean, it really does start with that. If I'll give you. To close this out and to maybe prompt you to read the book, in the book Think and Grow Rich, it comes down to 6 points. Napoleon Hill says, and these were points that he had derived from all these other highly successful people. And he said, decide what you want, decide when you want it by, decide when what you're willing to give up for what you say you want. He said, because there's no free ride. You do have to give up something to get what you want. You can't be a fit soccer team and be sitting on the couch eating, nacho or Twinkies or whatever it is, right? Write down what you say you want. Write down when you say you want it by. And then Hill talks about actually reciting it out loud, which I know a lot of people in here would think, well, I can't do that or I can't do that. That's fine, but he also talks about how, he said, I'm really amazed how there's so many people around who want success, and all the literature that you ever would need to be successful already exists. There need not be another book written, honestly. You just have to open it and read it and take action on it. So, I'm sorry, what's your name? Judson. Oh, you're Judson. Hi, Judson. That's fine. I would say, Judson, you got to, listen to your heart, right? And at some point it's going to tell you, you're already naked, and so you got nothing to lose anyway. There's a lot of dogma flying around. And again, I'm not here to tell you what that should look like on your calendar. I'm just here to tell you that when it hits you, then start to take some steps forward, because time really doesn't give a crap. It's going to keep going. It really doesn't care. So again, you don't manage the time, you manage your priorities, and so you have to decide. I tell people, and I will close with this. I tell people to go out and buy a stenographic notebook. You guys know what that is, with the line going down the center. And on the left-hand side of the page, write down everything you say you might want to do: travel, take a cooking class, make your ankle. Is it your ankle? Better, or whatever, and write it down on the left-hand side of the page. I call that your what's. What I want to do. I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and do that. And on the right-hand side, write down why. And you'll find out what your highest priorities are when the why is compelling enough. And if you can't get a good why down there, you just write because it'd be fun, or because it sounds cool to make $1 million. That's fine, by the way. But there's got to be, more and deeper whys that drive you to your actions. Okay, and you'll find that you should take action on the whys that are most compelling to you, or the why, because I want to do this, and I think you had some great answers, by the way, and so I would really encourage you to, to get going. And so you'll find that you want to take action on the strongest whys. Does that make sense, everybody? I mean, you want to take action on the strongest whys. It's not for your mother, father, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, or dog. It's for you. So you know what your whys are, and so write them down and list them, and then when you look at your page, take action on the whys. I'm not suggesting you throw out your what's. In fact, I would encourage you to keep them chronicled. So in your heart, they're there, right? I'm not telling you any idea is stupid. I'm just telling you to take action on the ones where your why can be the most compelling, because you'll find your way. Goals are what's, why, and how, and you'll find a lot easier how if your why is strong, because your why is going to kind of keep driving you. That's your passion. That's your mojo. Whatever you want to call it, that's what drives you, that's your fuel and energy. So I can't give you a thing, but I would tell you to start to write some stuff down. And I find that most people don't want to write stuff down, or are afraid to write it down because they might have to commit to it. And so people I talk to all the time, well, I know what I want to do. I say, well, write it down. I don't need to write it down, I'll tell you. So I'm not even going to talk to you until you write it down. I won't waste my time until someone's willing to make a commitment to themselves about what it is. So again, there's a big part of me, folks, that feels like a little bit like I took time and didn't get across to you. And so I'll give you my email address, and if you want to write me a note, I'd be happy to share with you, or to Adam's point you to resources that I think might help you. Sir?
What was the book that you had when you changed your whole?
In These Girls, Hope is a Muscle. It's a story about a women's high school basketball team in Massachusetts, and my kids were, I think, in 7th and 5th grade at the time, and I had never exposed them to interscholastic sports. And here I am, kind of a jock, and I had never exposed them to it. And I said, I'm a terrible dad, and so I went out and I put something together that hadn't existed in the past, and it turned into something far beyond what I could have envisioned, and so forth. Not just for me, for the whole institution, the school, and it just kind of built and prompted me. So it had nothing to do with motivation. It just had to do with something that struck me at my core and said, you're a piece of crap father for not doing this. And it was selfish in a way. I mean, it was for my own kids, but it turned into something far greater than that, which makes it pretty cool. I did. I coached, I loved it my whole life, but I waited until I was 45 to start doing it, and I still am coaching today. It's kind of interesting. There's, Shaq's college coach is a gentleman named Dale Brown. He's a Hall of Fame coach. Actually, there'll be a movie about him pretty soon called Man in the Glass House. And Dale wrote me, he was in the gym. I was coaching his grandson, ironically. I didn't even know he was in the gym. And he came up to me afterwards and just wrote this beautiful recommendation for me. I have it up on my website, and I was just coaching. And so, it's interesting when you start to do what you think you want to do and your passion is there, people notice it just in your being. You know what I mean? Just in your doing. And so just out of the blue, I could have never dreamed that something like that would take the time to write to me. He told me I should write a book, and he would write the foreword for me. This guy's a pretty busy man, speaks all over the country and so forth. But it's interesting when you find your passion and you start to operate around it, it starts to be magnetic. It really does. But you have to trust yourself. You have to trust yourself and do what matters most to you because, bless. I would say, I said this before, but I would say if not you, then who? And if not when, if not now, then when? So, why shouldn't you be you? Why should you go be somebody else or what somebody else has in mind for you? And, when to start? Judson, when to start? I guess now or soon, whatever. I'm not in a hurry at all, but if anybody else, and otherwise I thank all of you for taking the time. And again, I'll write it up on the whiteboard here. And if anybody wants to, ask any questions or need resources, or I can give you a website where I have some resources posted, I'm more than glad to do that. So, thanks everybody. Hey, Judson, how are you?
Sorry,
it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. I really do feel like I let these folks down.
Not at all. I mean, what you were just saying definitely resonates. I got a quote out of what you said. It's start with the what and let the why.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm glad. And, there's just a lot of different things to kind of share, but it was a little bit of a free format, and every room is a little different. That's why I picked on Jay, because I needed a foil. I'm going to finish my email address real quick. I'm not shaking hands with you. You're sick.
Yeah, it was going to be.
You too.
Follow up with you via
Please.
email.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Judson. I'll give you a card. Thank you very much, by the way, for sharing and opening up. I hope that's a little helpful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Thank you. I'll give you a card. I have a couple.
So you have that quote up there.
Which one?
You either
I'm a
have
I'm a quote machine.
or doubt. Choose.
Yeah.
So my only question would be like, how do you know if you're trying to do something that's too out there, like you might not be able to do it?
Well,
Like, or it might not be feasible?
well. Again, you either have faith or doubt, right? I mean, you either go for it with every fiber. Sorry, I didn't mean to do it. No. What's your name?
Christian.
Christian Berry. Thanks for participating.
Yeah,
It's helpful.
I have some more questions. My writer's here, so I'll send you an email.
Please do. I'm more than glad to help. Of course, I'm more than glad to help in any way I can. What's wrong with your ankle?
Oh, I blew it out, so it's purple.
Oh, okay. All right.
Not broken though.
Oh, good. Well, it's great to meet you, Kristen. Really, thank you. Thank you. And please, I'd be insulted now if you don't write to me, since he said you would.
Okay, all right. Thank you for coming.
What's your name?
So Chris.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Was it helpful at all, or?
Oh, definitely. It's motivational. So a lot of times that's even better than just like A to B. Like this is the step.
I don't. I'm not an A to B guy.
So,
You know.
it was different and very helpful. So.
Okay. It would be helpful if you would kind of give us some feedback. So, I mean, for this whole series, right?
Yeah.
If we could figure that out moving forward. I have a survey. You know, if people want to take the time to do it, it'll take about 3 minutes.
I'll send you a follow-up email.
Please.
Asking about the survey and everything. And then if you want to send me the link, I can shoot it out to the listserv and
Yeah.
say, for those of you who showed up, I mean,
Well, you're also doing your constituents a favor, right?
Yeah.
The next group. You know, Barry, that sucked. Why would you talk about that? Or this part was helpful, but this part was stupid. You know, because again, you know, we're all trying to learn together, right? Like, you know, what matters most. I mean, look, I'm 60. You guys are 20. You know, there's a big gap in there. Some of what I have is very pertinent. Maybe some of
like
it
you
is.
said, though, every success book has already been written.
There's nothing. Nobody needs to write another one. There's, you know, there's just things that you have to do that, you know, that, yeah. So, but you know what? You have to open the book. You have to take action.
No, I'm gonna check out some of the books you mentioned. So.
It was the last one was Think.
Thank you once again. Think and Grow Rich. I will send you. I can send it to you right now. I'm so cool. I think I could send this to you right now. And you too.
You have all the gadgets with you now.
Well, I do a couple of them anyway. Let's see. Where is it? It's in. So let's see. I'm going to email this. Email it. So do me a favor. Type in your email address if you would, and then you can too. Is that it, Chris? Okay, so I'll get a couple, and then you'll have it in your inbox.
Okay, great.
It's an e-copy. Please read it.
Definitely.
Please, you know.
I think that's the first step I'll take.
Please read it. Did you want a copy of Think and Grow Rich? I can actually email to you literally right now. This is I just remembered this is a pretty cool thing.
At first I thought you were thinking girl rich.
Pardon me? What'd you say?
I thought you meant thinking girl rich.
Oh, no. Think and Grow. Where's it?
Thinking girl rich. I was like thinking girl rich.
Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you. Yeah, thanks, Chris, very much. And please feel free to write to me. You'll have my email address.
Okay, thank you.
So, sure. Where's the comma? I can't find the darn comma.
Oh,
Where's my... There it is. Okay. So do me a favor and type in
oh yeah, absolutely.
type in your email address.
Alex,
Thank you, Alex. Was that helpful at all? I mean, anything at all? That's more than fair. What? I mean, it's great input. You know, you heard me admit to my fear. What was so terrifying?
Well, I guess we're maybe in a similar position where maybe I'm not doing exactly what I want to do, but more like what I think will be beneficial.
Sure.
Not necessarily my passion, but more like successful.
The comma?
There you go. Type. No, it's it. You got it. So not exactly your passion, but you feel like you have to do it. Well, but say I mean, again, I didn't have enough time, and had you said that in front of the room,
That's kind of what I was referring to as well. Like, how long do you play along?
well, it's like at what point do you decide? You know,
You just kind of know. You gotta
well, I mean, at some point you just say to yourself, remember, you have nothing to lose. I mean, what do you really have to lose? Is success being unhappy but having a Lexus?
It depends on what point you are in your life. If you have a marriage and kids,
well, it all depends. I mean, I don't drive a Lexus, and I don't feel unsuccessful, and I haven't, and I'm not just defining it for you, or you. That's not the point at all. But I'm just saying you have to know, again, what matters most. I call it a win statement. What's important now? And again, I'll share this with you guys.
You're saying, like, don't let what you want.
The chief cause of failure and unhappiness is trading what you want most for what you want now. So it's like, and that's true again, because take it from me. You wake up and you're 45 and you say, shit, what the hell am I doing? And all of a sudden.
Did you still keep your business though?
I did, of course. Yeah, I did. I needed to make money, but
I'm saying, it's like, how long do you work until you, I don't know, it makes
well, but I mean, look, the whole idea, if you start young enough, you can turn, there's a great book, again, I'll put it, I don't have an e-copy of it, it's From Good to Great. You guys know this book? So it's like, the concept of good to great, you're going to write it down, is, he said, Jim, I can't remember his name, says that good is the enemy of great. And it's a really eerie concept. Because, I'm good. I'm good. But, some of these people were great. And so it's like, at what point do you say, I want to kind of push it, I want to kind of keep going, and so, how do you get, are you driven to be great? Are you driven to do something great? I can't answer that for you, but, my son is a comedy writer. Yeah, the guy in the back corner, the closely shaved, balding guy. And then those two are brother and sister, both UCLA. The young lady's here at school, and Adam graduated at UCLA. He's a comedy writer, and people say all the time, well, gee, that's hard, to make a buck. And it is. I say it is. But, what's really hard is waking up every day and going to a job you hate. It just, it's like, and so at what point do you say, screw it, I'm gonna pursue, my passion.
Mantra to kind of impart on entrepreneurial-minded students. It's like, kind of just at one point, you just kind of
You just need, you draw a line in the sand. Look, it doesn't, Benji works in food service. He makes a living. He's not making nearly the living you're making, but he is, and not to, anything, but he wants to write comedy. No, he wants to write comedy. I'm not going to tell him not to. I'm not going to say.
Is there a point where that needs to, well, not needs to, but
I
that
don't
will change once he has a family?
Maybe he
Because
puts.
you have financial backing, so you already could pay for their educations. Could you?
Well,
Would you switch?
I could have, but no, I pay for his education, but he wasn't a comedy writer yet. He had got his education, but that was a conscious decision on my part. But I also was a conscious decision to get married. Some people don't put marriage.
That's priority.
Exactly, back to priorities, right? And again, trust me, I'm not here trying to tell you how to live your life. Respectfully, I don't give a shit. Respectfully, right? I don't care, right? Pardon my language, right? But you need to care. I don't. Again, he's a comedy writer. I'm not going to tell him to go sell insurance or equities or, because this is what the guy wants to do. So, he may fail miserably. He may fall on his face and break his nose. But, this is what the guy wants to do. They had a show called Fireside Chats. It was on UCLA television. If you look it up, it's all over YouTube. They actually did a pretty good job with it. But yeah, it's you're right. It's a question of which priority. Do I want to get married, or do I want to keep pursuing this, following that dream? And no one, to that quote, your parents, your associates in society shouldn't tell you what dream to follow. It's your whats and whys that should tell you what dream to follow. Does that make sense? And your parents. My parents, God bless, are still alive. They didn't have to live my life for me. I was that person for a while who my life was being lived because my parents had fear and all this. This is all being recorded, ironically, but hell, it's true. But ultimately, I said one day, say it out loud on the mic, and I just said, I gotta, and